Shalom and welcome to the weekend edition of the Daily Dose of Hebrew. We're continuing our study of Jeremiah chapter 7. We saw in the previous couple verses that the Lord said he was not interested in external sacrifices and expressions of worship if the heart wasn't there, because what he really wanted was for them to listen and obey his word. And that's what he always communicated to his people. Well, in this verse here, he's going to show what the people of Israel in Jeremiah's day, how they have responded. It's not what he wanted at all. Let's read the text in Hebrew as we get started. Velo shama'u, velo hitu et oznam, v'yeleku b'mo'etzot, bishlirut liban hara. V'yihyu le'achor velo lipanim. Well, the Lord wanted obedience, but what happened? Velo, but not. They listened. So here we have a perfect. It's just going to be a perfect with this superlative right here. And then there's going to be a third common plural. And this is a cal from our good old verb shema. We actually saw it in the previous verse. The Lord wanted them to listen, but they did not listen. And they did not. Now this one here is a tricky one. It's fairly common, so you might be getting used to seeing it, but to analyze it, it's really sort of tricky, because what you have at the beginning is a hey prefix, a hip prefix actually, which is going to indicate that we're going to have a hifil, and this u superlative. So once again, we're going to have a perfect. It's going to be a third common plural. This time it's going to be a hifil, as I just mentioned. But what is the root? All we have is this one tate right in the middle here. Well, there's a dagesh in the tate, and you may realize that this is actually from a nun, which has disappeared and assimilated into the dagesh there. And then we don't have anything on the end. Well, what tends to leave nothing at the end? Very frequently it's the three hey verb. So this is our verb nata, which means to stretch out. And this is often used with, as you're going to see over here, with the noun ear, to stretch out one's ear, meaning to incline one's ear. It can be used in the cal, but it's frequently used in the hifil with this sense. So it's sort of a complicated one. There's a couple verbs that do this that only leave one letter in the middle that's left. Naka, to smite, is another one, but nata is one. So it's a little tricky, but it's a fairly irregular verb, if I can put it that way. So you should be getting used to seeing this one here. And they did not stretch out, direct object marker, their ear. This is ozen. Ozen, this is a kametz hatuf here, because it would usually be, if it were independent, it would be with a holum up here. It comes down to a kametz hatuf. And then with this is a suffix, this is a 3MP suffix. Then they did not stretch out or incline their ear. And they walked. Once again, well, this time we have an imperfect, but with the same sense as what we had up here with the perfect third comma plural. This is an imperfect with the yod at the beginning. It's going to be an imperfect consecutive, too, with this vav right here. Yod at the beginning and an u at the end, imperfect consecutive. This is going to be a 3MP. This is a cal, a little bit irregular, but very, very, very common from our verb halak. And you remember that the hey drops off, it leaves the sere underneath, sort of like some pei yod verbs. One yod verbs do the same sort of a thing. But we're pretty used to seeing these two letters, a lamet and a kaf, to tell us from the verb halak. And they walked in. Now, what is this here? They walked in moetzot. No, a little bit tricky here. It looks like we have a feminine plural. Actually, this is a noun that's always found in plural. And the mem at the beginning is actually something you frequently add to a verb in order to make the verb into a noun. And this is actually from the verb ya'atz, which means to counsel someone. So moetzot, moetz it would be, could be written with a full holum vav. In this case, we only have the holum right here. But it means to be counsels or plans or devices or something like that, the things that people think up all by themselves. So they walked in devices. We'd have to supply the probably the possessive pronoun their devices. In shrilut This is a noun which means, it's mostly found in Jeremiah and once in Deuteronomy, once in the book of Psalms as well, but very frequent in Jeremiah. Stubbornness, and here it's in construct. So it's the stubbornness of, because we're going to find it's going to be their heart. This is lab or labab, lavav. So it's their heart and their evil heart, their heart, the evil one. So we would, since these are definite here at the end of the construct chain, this is also definite over here, so we can add the article, so to speak. In the stubbornness of their heart, their evil one, the stubbornness of their evil heart. So they didn't take what the Lord had said for them to be doing at all. Vayihu. Now, once again, we have an imperfect. It's going to be a imperfect consecutive. It's going to be a third masculine plural, and a kal again, but this time it's from the verb haya, a verb to be, and the final hey has dropped off in this case. So you have the hey and you have the yod, but you don't have the final hey. The yod here is the yod of the prefix, the preformative for the imperfect. So, and literally we would translate this, and they were for, and then aho is a noun which means back, but with the preposition la, it's frequently used in the sense of something behind or maybe backward, and especially when you're going to see this contrast here, and not lifanim, for faces. So they were for the back and not for the faces. And we're not sure exactly how to translate this. You're going to see three different approaches toward it in the translations, but obviously it's sort of the posture that they're taking. It's either turning them back, or they're presenting their backs to God or something. They were for the back and not for the faces. So they're not responding to God in the way that he wanted to at all. So the overall sense of what's going on here is pretty clear, even if it's hard to nail down exactly what is being said here. But we'll look at that in the translations here. So, not too difficult in the analysis for exegesis right there. Let's go ahead and look at a couple translations. First of all, in the New American Standard, which is obviously going to be very, very literal, yet picking up this little contrast with the velo and not, yet they did not obey. So to listen here in this sense, being translated obey, which is a very good translation for it, or incline their heart, but they walked in their own counsels, literally in counsels, but the sense is their own plans, their own devices, and in the stubbornness of their evil heart. And so that's a pretty direct translation there. And they went backward and not forward. They were for the back and not for the face. So they translated that we went backward and not forward. A little bit different in the New Revised Standard Version, a different one. Yet they did not obey or incline their ear. That's pretty direct. But in the stubbornness of their evil will, so they jumped over to this part. In the stubbornness of their evil heart, they translated that as will. That's sort of okay. They walked in their own counsel. So then they pick up this section over here and put that after that. They walked in their own counsels and looked backward rather than forward. So in this one had they went backward. Here's they looked backwards. In other words, where are they facing? They're not looking to the Lord and how the Lord wanted them to walk forward in communion with him, but they're walking backwards instead. And then one more possibility or variation is from the Revised English Bible, a British translation. But they did not listen, so they translated listen more directly, whereas the other two translated it obey. They paid no heed and persisted in their own plans, in their devices, their own plans, and they've added persisted instead of walking, but that's good. That picks up the nuance. With evil and stubborn hearts, the evil heart and stubbornness here, so they put that together in a slightly different way. And they turned their backs and not their faces to me. Now, to me is not here in the text, but they were for the back and not for the faces. So this is the way they've interpreted that here. And that could give a possible sense as well, especially in the light of the whole context of this passage that we're looking at. In any case, this is not the kind of response the Lord wanted from his people. What he wants is simply to listen and obey. As I used to tell my children when they were young, listen and obey. That's what the Lord wants from us, and not to walk in the stubbornness of our own evil hearts, because that's always the temptation. Well, Jeremiah has more to say in this text, so check back with us soon as we continue working through chapter 7 in the weekend edition of the Daily Dose of Hebrew. Shalom.